So the folks that are online, you would have gotten a pop-up. Just go ahead and say you got it. All right, Rick is showing up, and Lee's going to show up, and it's just if I already sent you stuff, you can disregard, but just pass that clipboard, just say your name and your email address so that you're part of the distribution list weekly. So let me start this off. Let me share my screen. All right, perfect. So welcome, good morning. My name is Mark Edgerkin. I'm the chair of the Adult Learning Committee, and it was long overdue for me to present a class. Rick and Carol have been doing so many classes for us, so I'll give them a break and get ready for the next one for him. He's not off the hook, but I appreciate just for everyone now, we're, because of COVID, please keep your mask on. I'm only taking my mask off so that you guys can hear me clearly. Folks are online as well. So once again, welcome to Climate Justice, Care for God's Creation. And so let me give you an introduction to the course. This is, like I said, this is a 7-week course. We'll have one Sunday off for the church council meeting or church congregational meeting on finance. That'll be January 30th at the end of the month. But we'll have three straight sessions, and then we'll have another 4 sessions. And this course is going to be similar to the ones we did before on racism and dialogues and sexuality with Rick and Carol performing these classes. Is that we're going to watch videos, we're going to have interactive dialogue, online folks and folks here. So we have 2 speakers here, so we should be able to hear everybody even from the back, so the folks online can hear you guys. This class is really based on Dr. Katharine Hayhoe. She's a climate scientist, and she has a book called Saving Us, a Climate Scientist's Case for Hope and Healing in a Divided World. She's basically her little bio, I'll read it from on my own script, is Dr. Katharine Hayhoe is a climate scientist and a chief scientist for the Nature Conservancy. She's also endowed professor of public policy and public law, and Paul W. Horn Distinguished Professor at Texas Tech University. She's been named a United Nations Champion of the Earth and one of the Times 100 most influential people, and serves as a climate ambassador for the World Evangelical Alliance. Katharine was a lead author for the U.S. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th National Climate Assessments, host of the PBS digital series Global Warming, and has written the New York Times, for the New York Times. Her TED Talk, The Most Important Thing You Can Do to Fight Climate Change, Talk About It, has been viewed over 5 million times. And she has a bachelor's of science in physics and master's and PhD in atmospheric science from the University of Illinois in Champaign. So like I said before, we're going to have these discussions, and then Rick, I try to get a hold of Dr. Cynthia. I don't know if maybe you have to ping her again on Monday. I think she's out of the office right now. Oh, is she? Okay, that's why she didn't respond to me. But she said she was going to do our final session. So these first six sessions will be who you see on the screen. Dr. Katharine Hayhoe, she'll be doing all the videos, and we'll have discussions about that, and I'll facilitate that.
Can I just mention that Cynthia is the director of the new center at GLPS, which is the Center for Climate Justice, which is it's a PLTS partnership with the Lutheran World Federation. So they're working across the world with congregations and scientists and so on for climate justice, doing training and providing resources. And so she's going to share with us about the center and how we can connect with the center.
Okay.
It's a great way to end as we think about what we can do individually and as a congregation.
Great. Thank you, Rick. All right. And so we'll start up with really about a 5-minute video. I just happened to see this while I was watching the news. So let me switch my sharing.
The signs were everywhere in 21, starting at the top of the world, where Greenland's highest peak was so freakishly warm that it rained for several hours. They believe that this is the birthplace of the iceberg that sank the Titanic. But now scientists are really worried this place could help sink Miami and Boston and Bangkok and Shanghai, because just this part of Greenland has enough ice that if it all melts, we'll raise sea levels by 2 feet. A new study predicts that the Arctic will see more rain than snow as soon as 2060. And in the meantime, the ice sheet so vital to a planet in balance is melting at a staggering rate. At number 9, that icy surprise in Texas, which illustrated how the climate crisis can run hot and cold. With wind chills below zero on the Rio Grande, nearly 10 million lost power. The February blast became America's costliest winter storm event ever. At number 8, flash floods on 3 continents. In Germany and Belgium, modern-day warning systems failed as a month of rain fell in one day. In China, commuters clung to the ceiling of a subway as a 1,000-year flood hit Henan province. And back in the US, the deadliest flood in Tennessee history came like a tidal wave. At number 7, the US rejoins the Paris Climate Accord, hours after Joe Biden became president. But pledging to slash planet cooking pollution by half this decade is one thing. Convincing Congress to take bold action is another. At number 6, a code red for humanity, as scientists around the world issue their most dire warning to date. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says it is unequivocal that human activity has cranked up the global thermostat by over 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and that we are careening dangerously close to a point of no return.
We meet with the eyes of history upon us.
And those warnings made number 5 all the more urgent. COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland. Of the 4 main themes laid out by COP26 host Boris Johnson, coal, cars, cash, and trees, it probably is going to be cash that provides the biggest challenge. For the first time in 26 meetings, the world's delegates agreed that fossil fuels are driving the climate crisis. But not a single country committed to stopping oil or coal production anytime soon.
A monster named Ida. The hurricane is intensifying quickly and drawing chilling comparisons to Katrina.
Hurricane Ida comes in at number 4. As 150-mile-per-hour winds screamed ashore in Louisiana in early September. But that was just the beginning. Ida's aftermath dropped a rain bomb on New York sudden enough to drown families in their basement apartments. And all told, the single storm cost over $60 billion.
We are following breaking news this morning. A dangerous and deadly night across the central United States. A powerful line of storms unleashing at least 24 tornadoes across 5 states.
At number 3, tornadoes in winter. December usually brings the fewest twisters of any month, but record warmth in the heartland spun up funnel clouds from Arkansas to Ohio, and weeks later, the damage is still being tallied. At number 2, the Pacific Northwest Heat Dome, which pushed the mercury in famously mild Portland well over 100 degrees for days, creating a mass casualty event of creatures great and small. Over 1 billion shellfish baked to death on the shores of British Columbia, and the little town of Lytton broke the Canadian heat record 3 times in a week before most of it burned to the ground. And at number 1, America's mega drought. Your water can come from rivers, reservoirs, or from wells, all of which have been impacted by a 20-year mega drought fueled by the climate crisis. With 90% of the West starving for rain, the feds declared the first ever shortage of the Colorado River, which is a source of life for over 40 million Americans. Meantime, smoke from western wildfires reached the East Coast this year. From 1 to 10, it is all connected. And without dramatic changes, on a global scale, scientists warn us the worst is yet to come. Bill Weir, CNN, New York.
All right, just wanted to say I wasn't trying to scare you guys, but I also wanted to say, remember what happened last year. So it's just this is a worldly thing. It's not just somewhere outside a different continent or anything like that. But let me share my screen again. Forgive me, I'm doing 2 things at once. I'm letting people in at the same time. All right, so why do we care about climate change? As we just saw the video, climate has changed. And what I want to do before we really get into deep discussions in the next few weeks is just go through some common terminology. So greenhouse gases, they're just gases in the Earth's atmospheres that trap heat. They let sunlight through the atmosphere, but they prevent the heat that the sunlight brings from leaving the atmosphere. And these quotes are from NASA, and common examples are listed right here on the screen: methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, ozone, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide. These gases, we're going to keep talking about them, and so you don't have to memorize their chemical names or anything, but we're not going that deep. But I wanted just to show you what are the different types of greenhouse gases. Then you heard it on the previous video, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are any hydrocarbon deposit that can be burned for heat or power, such as petroleum, coal, and natural gas. And then we'll be talking about the greenhouse effect, basically the warming of the Earth that results when atmosphere traps that heat radiating from the Earth towards space. And there's natural greenhouse effect, but there's also man-made greenhouse effect, and we'll talk about that in these next few weeks. Then we're going to talk about global warming. So global warming is a long-term heating of Earth's climate system observed since pre-industrial period. So we've been actually monitoring look at the temperatures and how much greenhouse gases are out there for a long time. It's not what we just started 10 years ago. It's really been, we do have documents and information data to say, this is what it was before, now this is what it is now. Next one is climate change. And so, a lot of these terminologies become very intertwined. So that's why I want to talk about what like for 9 nations, what they talk about. So it's a long-term effects in temperature, weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of the climate change, primarily due to burning of fossil fuels like what I just talked about, coal, oil, and gas, which produce heat-trapping gases. And for the last common terminology, so kind of what this class is. This class is not just about science, but also talks about social justice. And so Climate justice acknowledges climate change can have a differing social, economic, public health, and other adverse impacts on the underprivileged populations. And that's from the Yale Climate Connections site. So those are my brief introduction of common terms that we'll be talking about. But now this actually starts the lesson plan. So what does the Bible say about the natural world? So we'll be putting Bible scripture in each of these classes. So I'll read the scripture real quick from Genesis 1 through chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." All right, so we'll now watch our first video from Dr. Katharine Hayhoe.
What's your understanding from the Bible of how God views the natural world?
Every Sunday school child or new believer learns what God's greatest gift is. We all know that God's greatest gift is his Son, who came to give us spiritual life. But I don't know about you, but I've never heard a sermon on what God's second greatest gift might possibly be. And I don't know that we necessarily have to agree how it ranks in this order, but definitely somewhere in at least the top 3 or 4, we have to consider this planet as one of God's greatest gifts to us. This planet is what provides everything we need for our physical life. And as we know, especially for example from the letters written by the Apostle John, we know that the physical does matter to God. We were never created to float around in the emptiness of outer space. We were created to live on a planet that gives us the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat, the materials that we use to make every single thing that we have. This planet also feeds our soul. It gives us the incredible natural beauty that surrounds us. And it is clear all through the Bible that God takes great pleasure in his creation. Whether it's the smallest, most insignificant aspect of it, or whether it's a distant galaxy or nebula far away. My father, a science teacher as well as a teaching elder in our local church, was known for the slides that he would put together back in the day when people used slides. He would have a slideshow that he would take around to camps and youth groups and churches and organizations. And he would show people the marvels of the universe, the distant things that we're only starting to see with the most powerful telescopes that we have. And he would refer to those as God's art gallery, things that God created simply for the pure pleasure of their beauty, something that no human eye would see until today. And even still, we know there's so much that we haven't seen yet. But it's not only that. It's the fact that we as humans are told that we have a special relationship with nature. So in Genesis 1, chapter 1, first book of the Bible, it says, God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, reflecting our nature." And that verse has a "so that," it has a reason attached to it. And the reason is no mystery. It follows immediately from this. It is so that we can, rada is the Hebrew word, every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. Now, rada has been translated originally as have dominion over. But rather than argue over what the proper translation is, I think that seeing this word used elsewhere in context lends new meaning and clarity to it. So for example, in Psalms, this word rada is used, and it refers to a godly ruler. May he rada from sea to sea. To what? in order to oppress, in order to extract all the resources from, in order to enhance the personal gain? Of course not. Mehi Rada, to deliver the needy when he cries to help, the afflicted also, and him who has no helper, to have compassion on the poor and the needy, and the lives of the needy he will save. So the word Rada is clearly associated with taking care of those that do not have the resources and the ability that we have. And then in Genesis 2, it continues and it says, the Lord God put man into the Garden of Eden to, and the words here are Abad and Shamar. Forgive my Hebrew accent, I do not speak Hebrew. But these words mean to serve or to protect or guard or keep. And they carry the connotation of stewardship. Imagine if we were given a piece of land by someone who we love and respect more than anyone in the world, and that person has invested in that land and cares deeply about the smallest blade of grass or insect on that land. And imagine if, rather than cultivating it and caring for it, imagine if we extract every penny of value we can from it and leave it a crushed and broken ruin. Instead, imagine if we took that land and we invested in it, we took care of it, we made sure that it was healthy, that the soil was healthy, that it could produce crops, that it could feed people, it could provide habitat for animals and plants. That would be fulfilling our responsibility. Here's the interesting thing though. Often we assume that nature or creation is other than us. So we read that verse in Genesis 1, and we assume that means that we are to care for every living thing, plants and animals. And in fact, this carries through to modern society today. The Cambridge Dictionary defines nature as all the animals, plants, rocks, etc. in the world that exist independently of people. So it's as if there is this barrier between people and nature. But here's the thing, we are living things too. And so when we are told to care for all living things, that is not only plants and animals, it obviously must include humans as well. Traditionally, we have often interpreted this in an egocentric perspective. An egocentric perspective puts humans on the top of the pile, resting our feet, so to speak, on the rest of nature. And we know that in the Bible, the concept of resting your feet on someone or something implies conquering enemies. It does not imply a Rada or an Abad or a Shamar. But then in the world, we may say, oh, well, humans are just one of every living thing and we're no different than any other. What we believe, though, is we believe that we do have a special role, but that special role is to care for, to protect, to guard, to keep all living things, including our sisters and brothers.
All right, so now we're going to open up both online and folks online and here in the classroom to do some discussion questions to start bringing this dialogue together and see what you just saw with Dr. Katharine Hayhoe, her talk on the 5 minutes she just did. So the first question, God commissioned humanity in Genesis 1, chapter 28. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. So what is your understanding of the Hebrew word Rada, translated as a rule or dominion in this verse? Yeah, Beth?
It strikes me as that we're to be caretakers. We have the authority, but also the responsibility.
Yep. Anybody online?
Play with the word subdue. What does it mean?
This is Kathy Hoiby. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing people in the audience in that room. I don't know if they can speak up or whatever.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. We'll do one more quick check on that, Mike. Can you hear me now?
Not very well. My hearing's pretty good, but maybe somebody else should substantiate that.
It's true. I can't hear the people. Like when Beth talks, it's way in the background.
Muffled.
Maybe because we're masked. Unfortunately, we don't want to have everybody take their mask off for that situation. But yeah, if you can't hear it, I'll reiterate what folks said.
Right.
Yeah, Lee.
When you first read the Genesis passage, that's the word that stood out. I wanted an answer: dominion. And to me, it seems like dominion is a king and suppressing and doing whatever they want to do. I was afraid people might interpret dominion to me, but I think she helped clarify that to me, that dominion is more, as you just said, I think, care and watching over and taking care of and managing perhaps, but not dominating and suppressing. Is that
what I heard?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I don't know if anybody can hear me, but yeah, it goes to show how we are at the mercy of the world view of the people that translate this. I mean, they believe their intention was to make it clear to us, but maybe they're just adding a filter. And the guy that translated it from Greek, into Latin added a filter. And the filters keep being put in there. And obviously, what she said is much more encompassing than our understanding of the word dominion.
I think the word dominion is unfortunate. We don't think it really translates to Hebrew intention.
Yeah, I have a question coming up, the third question, but we'll go in more little detail about that.
Evie just pointed out the word subdue, and that's sort of an unfortunate choice as well. I wonder if there's an interpretation different than subdue, because that sounds very domineering, I guess.
I don't know if you heard that, Mark. Maybe it's a good thing you didn't hear that. Yeah, go ahead.
And I know we're in church and the biblical perspective is important, but we get sidetracked on this. We should be talking about science. We're well beyond dominion questions. Our responsibility is level 10, based on the science, and all we're keep doing is talking around the issue. Pastor talked about the big lie this morning. You know what the big lie was before this? Climate change. And it still is. And we're hiding behind the big lie because we don't want to take responsibility, which is way more important word than dominion, because of where we are and who we are. I'm sorry.
Well, except that, this is Carla talking. Yep. Except that this is a big issue for most evangelical Christians. Maybe those of us in this room agree with what I think Dennis just said, but there's a lot of people out there who do not. And I think that is the heart of them not even admitting that there is climate change.
Right.
I was just looking up the Hebrew translation for subdue, and it means, another translation is to bring the land under cultivation. So not just subjection or to vanquish, but to actually bring it under, to take care of it, as Beth was saying, to cultivate, to bring it to its fruition.
Is it? Yep.
So we missed something in the translation.
Yeah. So bottom line is, even within the Christian faith community, there are folks that have different ideas, but we're going to, like I said, and the one thing I was worried about today's class is that we want to tackle everything on day one. and of all the people I knew was going to hit it, was Dennis. So we do have more sessions. We'll talk about all aspects of climate change. So for sure, but what I really want to talk about, and this is a good discussion. This is what I wanted. It was that we're talking about, from a biblical perspective, what is our responsibilities. And so let's go on to the second question. All right. So the second question is, do we tend to think of creation as something other than us? If so, what damage can this way of thinking cause?
I don't think we do. I mean, I personally don't. I mean, God created us, and then, we're all part of it.
Yeah. So the next question, I'll talk more about it, but the question, and for this part of this question, really is, God, there are people that, the evolutionists and then the creationists, talking about the 7 days of creation, and God created, the earth and plants and animals, and then human beings. There are folks that don't think that, all the animals are here to serve us, and we're just living on a king, on a throne. So to me, this question is a little bit, just a little more of an intro to the next question. I really want to talk about this next question, but unless anybody else has any some concern about it, online or anything. Okay. Oh, Mark, you have something? Oh, yeah. All right. So this is the one we're talking more about, and it was on the final section of the video we saw. So what can we do ourselves to move from being egocentric or ecocentric or being theocentric? So I'll just give brief definitions for each one. So egocentric is when we're humans considering humans to be the top of the pile. Just like in the video, there's that triangle. We were on the top with the rest of nature below us. So we're in control. We do whatever we want to. And then there's echocentric, considering humans to be no more important than or different from every other living thing. That's where we're all one big, happy family. And then there's theocentric, considering humans to have a special role to care for and protect all living things. Lee, you talked about it, that, we all have a special role in this world that we live in. She showed a video where, everything was nice and green. And then we talked about someone, some corporation, basically pulling all the resources from that land. That's the egocentric, where money comes first before what potentially could happen here in this part of the country or the world affects something else. And definitely, we're getting power right now, and I think we're getting power from the hydro dam, but a lot of parts of the world are getting power from fossil fuels. And 100 years ago, that was the only way we could get power, and we needed to, improve our lifestyle. But we now know what fossil fuels do, and so we have to start thinking about, instead of building new fossil fuel plants, let's think about renewable energy. And to me, that's what theocentric is we're going to care for the world and make sure that going forward in the future, because we can't go in the past. The past is done. We've put a lot of greenhouse gases in the air, but we got to figure out how to get it in a better situation. Yeah.
If you go down to the harbor, you see the coal cars going up here to Washington County being shipped over to China. And I think that the people, we've made great advances in the United States and in other places in Europe, but there are people like in Africa or people in the South Sea Islands who are saying, you've had all this now, how do you expect us to get it without using the same kind of methods that you have?
Good question. And actually, that same question was brought up in this book. It's Climate Church, Climate World. Dr. Cynthia recommended that book, and I enjoy that book as well. So to your question like that is where we have to look at Sorry, repeat that question again.
Well, my thought is,
Yeah.
how can we, who have gotten all this stuff because we've used the coal and the oil and so on,
yeah,
now do we recognize we're all together in this?
Yeah.
How can we tell these other people who don't have all this? Well, you've got to make some judgments and choices.
We're actually going to be talking about that. Let me look. I think it's in the next section, actually next week's class. It's called being, having the have-nots and have-nots, or haves and have-nots. The problem is I'm jumping the information, but bottom line is that the poorest countries, they don't produce that much carbon in the atmosphere. It's us, the U.S., China, and Europe that creates all this gas in the air, but we're doing the most damage. And in these countries, especially Caribbean islands, all these Maldives, they're going to sea level rises. They're going to be the most impacted. So we'll talk about that in the next couple of weeks. But for this question here, any other thoughts about the egocentric mentality, echocentric mentality, and theocentric mentality?
Well, I'd like to address what whoever that was just said. And we, obviously, as we look around, we've got a broken model of how we do things on the planet. We're causing all these problems. And then these other less developed countries say, oh, we want that broken model too. Let us have that.
Yeah.
And, they really need to consider that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yes, so in her book, Dr. Katharine Hayhoe, she talks about this situation, and we're in the COP26 for at Glasgow this past November. We in the CNN clip I showed you guys, that the biggest thing, people agree climate change is happening, but the next step is putting money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And it's hard, yes. There's so many lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry that you're telling Congress and different world leaders, they're putting money in their pockets, but so that they can keep doing what they've been doing, and that's keep making the most profit of any industry in the world with the least amount of responsibility of impact.
It's interesting. This is Chang Choi here. I'm not a member of Saviors, but thank you for letting me join this discussion here. And I think, Marco, I think you're in aerospace. So I'm a civil engineer by trade. I don't work in civil engineering, but a good friend of mine is in the fossil fuel industry. His company does get kind of drill heads for tapping and stuff. He ended up in the industry. He's there, and we're talking about electrification of vehicles and everything else. I worked a little bit in drones and stuff, so I was talking about some of the ways that they're trying to transfer power or whatnot. And he said that the people in his industry pretty much know that as soon as aviation, which is a big part of the industry out here, as soon as they go green, fossil fuels are out of work, pretty much. That's pretty much where the biggest industry of a continuous revenue stream or whatnot has been slow to adapt to it, but as soon as aviation goes away from fossil fuels, they'll be out of work. So I thought I'd share that with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I work for Boeing, and we're not me personally, but Boeing is doing I lost my train of thought, lost the name of the fuel that is eco-friendly fuel. The biofuels, biofuels. And there is promise right now, just still in the certification process through the FAA and other world regulations, regulatory agencies. So it's going to take some time, but it is moving in that direction. Once all these aircraft can burn biofuels, they produce a lot less CO2 emissions. So that's
yeah. We can definitely talk on that topic more. There's a lot of electrification aviation going on in Everett, right? There's companies that are doing that all. The other thing I wanted to share about theocentric, which I want to bring in a word that kind of reminded me of, was not just protecting, but I always think about symbiotic relationships. I think about like the kind of fish that are attached on the ones and things like that. And I think that, well, why can't we plant trees to make this world a better place? That's going to make our air better, even just having plants in your household and stuff. So I think that theocentric to me is that, yeah, we're kind of in control, but we also need to realize that kind of between theocentric and ecocentric is that, you know, symbiotically, we all need each other to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chang.
Mhm.
All right. So any other just
Yeah, there's a revolution going on, more than one, but science is exploding right now. I don't know what you think about Musk and so on, but he is into batteries big time, and storage batteries, batteries for cars, for planes. They just flew the first plane, electric plane, across the English Channel. They're working on a big plane and outfitting it with electric motors, and they're going to be testing that. There's going to be major changes coming in the next anywhere from, they say, 2 to 10 years in just power. And I see where our fossil fuels are on the way out. We still have a lot of it in use with all the plastics. The plastics come from fossil fuels. And look what it's done to the ocean. The trash in the ocean. There's an island in Hawaii that used to be sand dunes. Now it's plastic dunes. So there's a lot going on right now in the world, both good and bad. And hopefully we can recognize it and overcome with the good.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Definitely.
Can I talk a little bit about ecocentric? I think there's a real danger in ecocentric thought that people look at animals in the animal kingdom and they say, well, they go out and they hunt and they kill and they do this and that. And that's how we should be like nature. But there's a difference to us. We have these big brains and we have a responsibility. And we can't model ourselves on that. We are part of the environment, of course we are, but we can't say, oh, we're all animals and we should just hunt and kill and destroy like a lion does or whatever. We have an obligation to be good shepherds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Dan, you have some?
I heard someone make a comment on this scripture that we looked at. And the comment was, we should declare victory. We did what God told us to do, declare victory and go on. And to me, it brings up, are we holding on to a scripture that's dead? Or are we ready to listen to, you know, is scripture alive and can we build on it? And should we be listening to more scripture? Other things that we should be basing our society on.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so looking at my time, we got another 15 minutes, and I want to be able to show one more video and then a couple more questions. But this is the engagement I really wanted. I appreciate everyone talking this through, and this is an important topic because I wanted this to happen in January also because it's the new year, just look forward, and like I said, the past is the past, but we're going to look at technology, look at what's God's intention for us to control or not control or to take care of this world so that future generations aren't suffering.
In June 2015, the Pope issued a formal report called an encyclical on climate change. Some were puzzled. He's not a scientist, they said. Why is a religious leader weighing in on climate change? Climate change isn't just a scientific issue. It is also a question of right and wrong. And for more than 80% of us around the world, We often get our sense of what is right and wrong from our faith. That's why leaders from across the entire spectrum have issued statements on climate change and on the importance of caring for creation and for other people on this planet. Informed by our science, it's our hearts that tell us we must act. I'm a scientist, and as a scientist, I can tell you science is awesome, but it can't do everything. When it comes to climate change, here's what science can tell us: that climate is changing. Science can also tell us that for the first time in history, humans, not natural cycles, not the sun, are the main cause of this change. Science can also tell us that the choices we make going forward will shape our climate future. If we continue to depend on old, dirty, polluting fossil fuels for most of our energy, we're going to be following a much higher and faster pathway to change. On the other hand, if we can transition in a sensible, sustainable way to clean sources of renewable energy that don't produce heat-trapping gases and other pollution, we're going to be heading much more slowly towards a safer future that will be easier to prepare for. Science can tell us what's likely to happen to our food, our water resources, our health, even our economy, depending on how much fossil fuels we burn. But this is where the science stops. Science can't tell us what's the right thing to do. Should we put a price on carbon? Or should we cap emissions and allow polluters to trade? If so, how much and how fast? Should we shut down the fossil fuel industry or encourage it to transition as well? Invest in new technology or help poor countries to adapt? Ideally, all of the above, but practically we can't do it all. We have some tough choices to make. And for that, we need to engage our hearts. And for many of us here in North America and around the world, what's in our hearts has a lot to do with our faith. Faith and science are not in competition. They are not two alternate and mutually exclusive systems of belief. As one atheist put it, scientists do not join hands every Sunday and sing, "Yes, gravity is real, I will have faith." In the same way, sacred texts like the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, they're not science textbooks. These books are intended to serve as guides, giving us a perspective on where we came from, where we're going, and how to live our lives here and now. That's why we need our science and our values when it comes to difficult, thorny issues like climate change. Speaking for myself, I'm a Christian, and I believe that as a Christian, I'm called to help people who are suffering. Who's most vulnerable to the impacts of a changing climate? The poor, the world over. From the single mother in McAllen, Texas, who can't afford to keep her family's apartment cool as the summers get hotter, to an elderly fisherman in the Maldives, who will soon have to find a new place to live as sea level rises. To the Syrian family in the refugee camp, their land and their home long gone, desperate to just find a safe place to live. But here's the good news when it comes to climate change. The desire to care for and help others is not exclusive to any one denomination or religion or even faith. Atheists, agnostics, and humanists share these values too. How do I know? Because when it comes to making statements about climate change, it's not just the Pope. Nearly every major Christian denomination and world religion has something to say about it. From the Episcopal Church, they say, "We are painfully aware that those of us living in the Northern Hemisphere are responsible for the majority of climate change. Accordingly, we hold a particular responsibility for the changes that will reverse the trajectory of atmospheric warming and safeguard the sanctity of what our God calls very good." From the other side of the world, here's part of the Hindu Declaration on Climate Change. We must consider the effect of our actions, not just on ourselves and those humans around us, but on all beings. We have a dharmic duty for each of us to do our part in ensuring that we have a functioning, abundant, and bountiful planet. There's even an Islamic declaration on global climate change. Our species, though selected to be a caretaker or steward of the earth, has been the cause of such corruption and devastation on it that we are in danger of ending life as we know it on our planet. This current rate of climate change cannot be sustained, and the Earth's fine equilibrium may soon be lost. Faith and science, data and sacred texts. On climate change, they're painting the same picture. Unless we've signed up for that trip to Mars, this is the only planet we have. It just makes sense to care for it, and to care for our brothers and sisters who share it with us, particularly those who are less fortunate than us and who are already suffering the impacts of a warming world. I truly believe that just about every single one of us No matter our religious background or lack thereof, we have all the values we need to care about climate change built into us. Every human on this planet is born with a sense of responsibility, appreciation for our world, and often an instinct to care for others too. And that's exactly what we need to make good choices and to inform our actions on climate change today. As scientist Jane Goodall says, it's only when our clever brain and our human heart work together in harmony that we can achieve our true potential.
All right, so we have another 5 minutes, or we have 2 questions left. I'm trying to combine some of these questions, but so the 4th question is, how do religious leaders help with climate justice? What is really, talked about the Pope and different faith communities. What's these religious leaders' responsibility towards climate justice? Because we see what's going on, poor neighborhoods. It's getting hotter summers, getting colder winters, and it just affects the folks that have less means to take care of themselves. And it's also in the United States, and we'll talk more about that next week. But what is the role of like the Pope she was talking about? Lee.
Religious leader. I think I'm a religious leader. I'm just as good as the Pope in leading, as far as we should all be. I think nitty gritty. We shouldn't turn to our bishops or our cardinals or our popes or whoever they might be, our gurus, that we are the religious leaders and we have to take on that responsibility ourselves.
Yep.
I agree, but the evangelicals, they really follow their church. They don't. I don't think most of them think like we do here. So they need it to come from somebody that they believe that they're following. But I don't know what hope there is for those
Rick, you have some?
sects of people.
Yeah, well, certainly our presiding bishop, Elizabeth Eaton, has spoken out very boldly about climate justice and the role that we all play in our congregations to speak out on this issue. So, I mean, we have good leadership in our church, reminding us that we have a responsibility.
Yeah, every year in November through the church council, which I'm part of, we talk about stewardship. The leadership sets guidelines and says, go in this direction, but it's all individually still. If we all do the small part, all these small parts add up to a bigger part, and we'll talk about that in the next coming weeks as well. Anybody online? Or Dennis?
I think we're talking about leadership, but I think it's more than leadership, it's influence. And so we can all agree and feel really good about how we understand and embrace the science, but we can't even get them in our Congress to even vote on anything that has climate change in it. We have more than half of our elected officials who maybe believe this, but they refuse to do anything. So our responsibility is to address, is equally be responsible on how we make change and how we make policy, first in our country, but then how do we influence policy in other countries? And that's political, and the church doesn't like to be political, but that's where we are. We have to be more political about trying to affect.
And we just did class on racism. We're getting our feet wet and with Black Lives Matter. This is all in the same bucket of doing and build back better and doing things that improve everybody. Not just one percenters. They're improve their lives, and the rest of us are in hot water, literally.
So, what influences our elected officials is people with money and powerful influence. So we have to find a way to be as equally influential. Maybe we wouldn't have the money to do it, but we have to bring pressure on people that make decisions to help us affect the policies that they're critical. We're at a really critical point in mankind.
And all the trucks in front of Manchin's place have not helped. He's still holding off.
Yes, because he's under the influence of all of the lobbyists. And why do we allow lobbyists in our country? I'm sorry. That's part of the problem.
Dan?
Hey, Mark, I think I understand the concern. What I don't hear is, I have not heard of plans. How do you destroy the oil industry and still keep jobs? How do you take airplanes out of the air and us keep our jobs? How do you take autos off and not destroy the business? So I haven't seen, I know there's a way to do that.
Yep.
But stopping the coal trains going to China, it probably isn't immediately, is not going to solve that problem. It's just going to destroy a bunch of lives.
Aware of it, though.
Yeah, you'd be aware of it, but so now we have to take other, but I still don't hear enough discussion about what our alternates are. What's the path? Well, how do we get there?
Maybe that's going to come out of this class when each one of us says, this is what I'm going to be able to do and will do.
You guys are just jumping into every chapter, talking about every chapter. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen.
It's a 7-week class.
Yeah. It's a 7-second class.
You know, one of the quotes that keeps coming to mind throughout this recent discussion we're having is, do for the least of my brother, care for the least of my brother. And like you said earlier, the climate change will be the most dramatic first on the least of the brethren, the people that don't have much money, that just have shacks to live in. So, any storm or anything wipes them away. The water rises in the places, where they live. So.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we just get one more question, then we'll call it quits for today. But I'm very thankful for you guys, like I said, for this meaningful discussion. So, kind of the same question: How do faith and science help reduce climate change? We kind of mentioned that already, talking about it. So if you have your scientists, and then you have your faith leaders. And then, a lot of stuff doesn't move until we hit that political realm. Scientists have been talking this to the politicians for decades, and nothing's really been done. So on the faith side, that's why we're having this class, so that we start that conversation, we build on that conversation, and we build momentum to, and get those, influence the politicians from the lobbyists that's giving them a paycheck.
Kyle shaking his head.
I'm just
Kyle,
really appalled by you imputing motives to people that are not true. You cannot say that every member of Congress is bought and sold by a lobbyist. That is the most cynical thing since Donald Trump ran for office. That's just outrageous. Those, admittedly, lobbyists are going to try and influence people, but those lobbyists are representing you, and everybody else in this room. The people that are whose motives you're imputing are elected. Okay, the Congress or the senator from West Virginia, the people that he represents in Congress, eat, breathe, and die coal.
Yeah, and that's why this is very difficult. We don't answer it in one day. But going forward is just bringing this conversation in both of these books I've read. That's the thing we can do as an individual. There are, there's corporations, there's policies, And things, we've done things in the past for years or for decades. But going forward, we do have the brain, and so that we can take that theocentric and show that we love the earth and we love our future. What scares me the most in this class is that about 2-3 years ago, I heard, and we'll talk more about this, is that we'll see the earth gain 2 degrees of Celsius in temperature on 2100, year 2100. Now the problem is we just realized it's probably half that. And that's the scary part. So there is a call to action. That's what I'm trying to convey to everybody. There is a call to action, and what you can do, what church can do, what our elected officials can do, and what businesses can do. There's been a lot of movement in the right direction. We're not saying that everybody is evil and stuff like that, but going forward, we need to find out. Instead of building this fossil fuel factory, which why can't we? We're asking the government for money to build, redo our bridges and stuff. Why can't we have a factory that builds solar panels or wind turbines, and build better infrastructure for electrical lines? So
it's all happening.
It's happening, but it's got to get faster.
There's major breakthroughs going on right now. There's lithium ion batteries that have problems. They're heavy, they're slower to charge. Now they've come up with a lithium metal, and it is lighter, it is quicker to charge, it lasts longer. They're talking about putting them in cars, and then when they reach 85% efficiency, they'll take them and put them in homes for storage batteries for homes, and into factories and into warehouses. And it'll take you 10 minutes to get an 85% charge on this battery for a car. It's almost equivalent to getting gas at a gas station. So there's things that are happening right now that are just opening the door to doing this. We need to get on board ourselves, letting the people in power know where we have to go. Poor Brazil wants to get in on this stuff. They're destroying probably their biggest gift, the whole Amazon river jungle area. They're burning it up, putting pollution into the air, adding to it. But somehow we've got to convince them to take advantages of that gift that they have. And how do you do that? It's wow. We have to ask ourselves, what would Christ do? What does Christ ask us to do?
I don't want to sound controversial here, and I'm a scientist and engineer also, but electricity and all these things weren't around when the Bible was written, right?
That's right.
Electricity, if we create more of these things, obviously there's people that are arguing, look at all the children that are being exploited to get these batteries and these raw materials and all these things, right? So is that just exacerbating something else in the future to provide for our comfort? Why can't we reduce? It's just economic demand. There's a Greek saying that one of my high school Greek teachers said was "Madena gan," is nothing in excess. Why can't we go ourselves on a diet? There's a lot of things that I'm reading that people are going back to the basics or whatever else is like, well, cold showers are great for you. You're jumping in the cold water because it burns brown fat, right? The food industrial complex, why are we eating this industrialized food when we can actually have urban farms and do these things, right? So why don't we think about what can we do in our environment, our homes, of not buying the tons of stuff at Costco and all the excessive waste and everything else, but have everything that we need versus everything for comfort.
Yeah, and one thing going back to that, what you just said, Chang, about comfort. And one thing I've been thinking about is what is you guys can think about this during this week. What is it too much? What is too much for what we really need? What do we really need in life? And I've been, I flipped through YouTube a lot, and one of the things that caught my eye was about there's groups that are belonging in the minimalist type mentality, where they have small houses and they're happy. Now they've met all their requirements, but what is is it? Do we need to have a mansion and spend $5,000 a month on an electric bill for just to keep a mansion heated when there's no one living there or something like that? So stuff like that. I'm bringing this up, and some of these are tough questions. That's why I'm doing it. And if you want to point arrows, I can deflect a little bit. So, but like I said, I appreciate everyone's conversation. And we got our next Sunday's session is going to be climate change is a poverty issue, and we're really going to talk about how this climate change is affecting the poorer nations or poorer communities in the United States. So it's no longer just somewhere in Africa. It's here. It's here now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and before we go, I want to have a closing prayer for everybody. So we, thank the Lord. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you've given us. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for understanding that we can't solve this in one day, and to bring this class together and to look at a calendar and say, okay, can I fix this tomorrow? Or can I fix this next year or the next decade? Or how can we all help? And how do we all, put things together and so that we can save our future for our kids and their kids and their kids. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Be with you.
We just need a whole lot more of a congregation here.
You're on.